Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
A little bit weak. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good evening.
All right. I welcome everyone to our October the 15th Nash County Board of Commissioners meeting. I will call to order at this time. It's all customary to start our meetings with a prayer from a commissioner. During this time, you are welcome to join us in that prayer. You're welcome to use it for a time for individual prayer of your own, or you're welcome to use it for a moment of silence. And at this time, I'd call on Commissioner Lou Richardson to lead us in prayer.
Dear Lord, we come into your presence with thankful hearts and minds, thanking you for this day and for bringing us to this place and for this purpose. We thank you for keeping us safe through the storm and whatever the damage that was going on when we went through. We thank you for sustaining us, and we thank you, Lord, for all those that assisted us through the storm and give us a helping hand, because that's what it's all about, is one helping other. Thank you for keeping us safe and keep us in your care. For us in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Chris. As we always do on our second meeting of the month, we would have a presentation from an inside department and one from an outside department. I had a little bit of problem choosing which was which today because we're intertwined with both of them so much. I'm gonna make an executive decision and call the hospital our outside presenter, not to mean there is anything negative toward the hospital whatsoever, but at this time I would call on Lee Isley, our President and Chief Executive Officer for Nash County Care Systems. I believe, Lee, this will be the first time you've appeared behind for the whole board, and welcome, sir.
Thank you.
Glad to have you.
Thank you for allowing me to be here with you today, and it's certainly nice to be able to meet you, and I'll be glad to, as we move forward, work and answer any questions that you may have.
Lee, have you met all of our commissioners?
I have met them informally, but not formally.
Of course, you know me well. We've met numerous times. Robbie Davis. Well, let's go around and introduce ourselves.
Yes, ma'am.
Richardson, District 1.
Wayne Outlaw.
Lisa.
Fred Belfield, I don't consider you in healthcare outside.
Dan Combs.
Well, certainly we consider ourselves part of the community, and certainly on the inside, but we understand you had to make distinctions, and so we're glad to be here and be able to be with you today. And so we want to talk to you. I know that Ian Buchanan, who preceded me in helping put a foundation in place for the health system, presented to you in February timeframe. And we wanted to make sure that we continued to open the dialogue and keep the communication going. And so I asked if Z and I spoke about coming back and just presenting some information that we've been working on that I know have been concerns and topics of discussion, not only for the Board of Commissioners, understandably, but also for your communities and your stakeholders and your constituents. And so let's see if we can't get you some information about the things that are going on at the hospital. So let's first talk about patient experience. And that's just simply how we interact with each other. About a year ago, we rolled out what we call Carolina Care. It's simply our approach and our culture of how we approach our work and how our culture and foundation is built. As you look at the six areas here, these are kind of the building blocks and the cornerstones of the program. I don't think you're going to see anything that's going to surprise you or that is overly difficult, but it does set an expectation for the performance and the way we approach patient care at Nash UNC. So how have we been doing? How were we doing, and what are the results of the Carolina approach and our refocus on customer satisfaction? So like all hospitals who participate in the Medicare program, we participate in what's called an HCAP, Patient Satisfaction Survey. That's Medicare's Patient Satisfaction Survey scores. They have 27 questions, 9 categories. They write the questions, they put them in order, and they tell us how to ask them and how to score them. And you may see that information on public data sites out there on the internet, and we look at them from percentiles. Percentiles is just simply how we are doing in comparison to other hospitals across the United States. The larger the number, the better we're doing. So it just simply means in the first one, a year ago with communications with physicians that patients rated us doing 37% better than other hospitals across the country. So not where we wanted to be. And you can see, so the larger the number, the better. And so our base is at least 50%. So that means that we're doing as well or better than half the hospitals in the state. And our ultimate goal is to be in the top 25% of hospitals across the country. And so that's where we want to be. You can see in the last year, we've made strides with these areas. These are the areas that we focused on over the last year that we knew we needed to improve. How physicians communicated with the patients, how our nurses communicated with the patients. Did our nurses listen to the patient and their concerns? The cleanliness of the hospital, and then did the patient understand why they were given new medication, how to take that medication, and why that medication was important. That one is the most important for keeping patients out of the hospital. We know that if patients don't understand their medication, they're at risk for readmission within 30 days. And so those are the areas that we worked on. And you can see the performance and the improvement over the last 12 months. And some of these are quite remarkable. New medications, we're going from the 41st percentile to the 80th. So we're doing better than 80% of hospitals across the country as it relates to patients understanding why they're given a medication. And so we want to continue. And then, of course, our nurses listening carefully. We're in that upper quartile. We're above 75%, so we're doing quite well with our nurses. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that we've been working on with our nurses that I know that you and Ian talked about a little bit in February. So other areas, so there's some other areas that we certainly want to be proud of and promote and continue to talk about and let you know the good job that's going on at the hospital. And so the Heart Center, radiation oncology, all these areas we're participating in the Medicare survey and looking at these independently and how we perform as rated by our patients who use us. Be glad to answer any questions that you may have. And again, you can see that these areas are doing quite well and are at or above our overall benchmark and targets.
One question.
Yes, sir.
The Heart Center being at 99, with it being relatively new, do you anticipate us being able to retain that kind of a number?
I think we're going to grow the Heart Center, and I think that number is going to continue to remain very, very strong, sir. And we're going to talk a little bit about that here in a minute, about one of the things that I know we've talked about even before we started the meeting that people often ask me about is what's the partnership with UNC brought to Nash, right? And what is our relationship with UNC? And so first and most importantly, we're still owned here locally, governed locally. We're an affiliate member of UNC, which means that we have a management contract for them to help us with areas to improve care. But the healthcare system is still a community asset, managed and governed by local men and women who work, live, and have spent their time here in our service area. And so we're very proud of that. The Heart Center is one of those tangible results that we've had a benefit from being affiliated with UNC. That actually is with the School of Medicine. And so our cardiologists come out of the School of Medicine, and we're right now in the midst of talking about how we continue to expand and bolster that program.
About the public relations through the media, that's one thing that for several years I have been encouraged to do more of, because sometimes negative information, maybe from one person, spread it, and then they spread it.
It travels fast, doesn't it, sir?
And so I believe that can be countered by doing that, letting the public know through the media what services you have and what kind of services they expect to receive when they enter.
Yes, sir, and I think that Dorsey DeBise, who is our Director of Marketing, has certainly taken that to heart and heard your voice. And we had 125 press releases over this last year. that I think have been very positive and have come out in light of supporting your comments, sir. So the other area that I know that we get into a lot of conversations with is our emergency department. And let's talk about some of the things that we're doing and the results we're seeing and why we think we're seeing those results. And so overall rating of care in the emergency department and likelihood to recommend, these are the two most far-reaching and broad questions that patients who come into our emergency department are asked. I think what's remarkable and why I want you to see this is that a year ago we were in the 11th percentile. So we were in the bottom 10% of hospitals across the country, and a year later we're at the 70th percentile for how patients rate us. And we'll talk a little bit about why we think that is going in the right direction. And then likelihood of recommending, we were in the 2nd percentile. So we were at the very bottom of hospitals across the country, and a year later we're at the 61st percentile. Again, our ultimate goal is to be at the 75th, but we've made lots of strides, and Carolina Care is a large piece of that. The administrative team and the leadership of the organization have taken ownership, and we round routinely through the emergency department, making sure that our staff have the equipment, the resources, and the work environment to provide good care. We speak to our patients in the lobby and make sure that they're staying informed. And we've did training with our staff on how to approach patients when they are having to wait. The other thing is that we know a year ago, the average time to provider, what we call door to provider time, was a little over 60 minutes. So it took from the time you walked into our emergency department to the time you saw a provider was a little over an hour. For the last 4 months, we were at 22 minutes. So we have made remarkable strides, and we just repositioned, refocused, and reworked how we got patients and providers together. And so I think that is certainly one of those areas that we're seeing positive results from. We've also reduced our left without being seen. That's another industry benchmark and measurement. That just simply means that you came in, you registered to be seen in the emergency department before we brought you to the back. You decided that you didn't want to be seen anymore. Most of the time that's related to your wait time. The industry benchmark is 2%. A year ago we were well over 3, closing in on 4%, and the last 3 months we're at 1.12%. So we're getting those patients back faster, we're keeping people informed, and we're making sure that they're receiving the care that they need.
Anyone that don't want you to see them anymore, do you document that?
Yes, sir. That we
They
measure.
sign that they don't want to be seen?
We can't find them when they come out.
Well, what I mean by that is proof that they didn't want to be seen.
Yeah, we don't ask and say, have you decided that you're not sick? We consider if you decided to come to the emergency department, you wanted to be seen. And so if we don't see you and you changed your mind, we believe that that's on us, not the patient changing their mind because they just feel better.
Well,
If you've made the trip
seem-
I know, but if you made the trip all the way to
It
see
just
us.
seems like it's a negative thing, and then they go out and say something wrong. You say, well, okay, here it is here. They told us.
Well, and
And-
I think by
They don't
seeing
tell
this
you, they
increase,
just walk out.
and
Well, if they just walk out, that's a
That's
different
right.
thing. They hadn't been registered.
that's right,
That's fine.
that's right.
But if they register and then decide they don't want to be seen, then that ought to be validated.
What he's tracking is what registered and didn't.
And-
That's right. So we're at 1.1%. So we see 70,000 patients. You can do the math. That's very few people who are deciding not to be seen. So another interesting working with Medicare that I think is important for you to know, and we're trying to educate our community a little bit, is that one of the questions of the 27 that patients are asked is rate your healthcare system from 0 to 10, 0 being the worst, 10 being the very best. And you can see here that on average, through this reporting period, it was 62.5% of our patients give us a 9 or a 10. We range from 62 to 65% that give us a 9 or a 10, and then we range from about 22 to 25% of patients who give us an 8. I will tell you that my experience, when someone asks me, I think an 8's pretty good. And I would tell you that I'm happy with my service if I got an 8, or if I gave an 8, right? Medicare doesn't agree with us. Medicare says 9s and 10s are the only thing that count. So 8 is the same as a 0. So if a patient gives us an 8, then they might as well have given the health system a 0, because Medicare sees it as the same. We want to earn the 9s and 10s, but we also want to educate so that you understand how the scoring works within the Medicare system. And then on the emergency department, only very good counts. And so you can see that very good and good, just as a 9, 10, and 8, are the majority of how people rate us in their experience as a healthcare system. But sometimes when you look at it on the public reporting, it doesn't quite make sense. And so I want to make sure that we have a chance to discuss that. So quality improvements. So this is about coming to the hospital and making sure that while you're with us, you're already sick, that we help improve your care and make you better and not make you sick while you're with us. So that's called hospital-acquired infections, and so, or injuries. And we want to make sure that we're continuing to track that. I know over the last year we've had some dialogue and discussions on that, and I want you to see where our improvements and our efforts have been. So one of those areas that may not seem like quality, but is very strongly related to quality, is EPIC. You may have seen either in the news media, or if you spoke with anyone associated with the hospital over the last several months, they could not have spoke with you about the hospital without mentioning EPIC. EPIC is our new electronic medical record. I told you there were 3 tangible results I was going to share with you today about the positive impact of our association with UNC. This is one of those. We would not have been able to go to EPIC without the partnership with UNC. It is still an expensive endeavor, but we would not have been able to afford that without the discounts that we were afforded through our affiliation and the support that we were given during our implementation. We implemented September 22nd. What does this do? It provides real-time information between providers in our community, in other hospitals, within the UNC system, within our hospital, about what's going on with the patient care while it is happening. I had an example, a family in the community brought in a relative into the ER. The patient was admitted. They had some questions and concerns. We were able, through EPIC, to link up their primary care provider in Chapel Hill, and that primary care provider was able to see exactly what was going on at Nash UNC while the patient was with us, and the primary care provider in UNC and our hospitalists were able to dialogue and talk to each other about the care plan for that individual. So we didn't have to transfer someone, and we actually had the primary care provider involved in their care.
They also do that when you go to your doctor's appointments.
Yes, ma'am.
They send a thing out saying you got something on my UNC chart.
That's right. And
And
then
if you don't do it, they keep sending it till you open it.
Yes, ma'am. They're persistent, aren't they?
Very.
They don't want you to admit. That's called a no-show, and that we don't want no-shows. So a couple of other things that we keep a close eye on that I know that we've been in dialogue over is the number of central line associated bloodstream infections. We call it CLABSIs. That's just a central line, and then an infection occurs. You can see through our efforts and working with our medical staff to develop best practices, protocols, pathways, that we've continued to decrease that number each year. And then catheter-associated infections, we call it CAUTI, are also decreasing over the years, and that's simply when you have a catheter and an infection occurs. Again, through our work with our medical staff, bringing them in and listening to their voice and their leadership to guide us on best practices. Also tapping into UNC and being able to ask questions about best practices, we've been able to decrease that.
Lead back on that.
Yes, sir.
I'm just amazed looking at just that one chart. When we as commissioners started getting so many phone calls was about 2015, and that just shows another thing right there. Of what
Probably,
he-
that,
what
that
he
you see,
reached
you
and
can
stuff.
see why that
Yep,
occurred.
yep, you can, and some other things that you've had up there I can see also.
So I think we continue to make strides, and I think, you know, our ultimate goal is to eliminate these hospital-acquired infections from ever occurring. Medicare gives you a benchmark. You can see that red line that goes across is the benchmark of where we want to be, but you know, you can see that we continue to make positive strides in those areas. This is surgical site infections. There's 3 colors on here. The blue is superficial. The orange is deep infection, and the gray is organ, or the bar on top is the organ space. Again, to your point, you can see calendar year 15 was the all-time high. We've continued to come down, and where we want to eliminate all of them, but the ones that we want to and have been focusing on are the deep surgical site infections and the organ space surgical site infections. And so you can see we've continued to make positive strides. Sepsis bundle. Sepsis is an infection. It has a high correlation to morbidity and mortality for patients, and it needs to be caught very quickly and treated very aggressively. So this is about the compliance of the of the sepsis bundle, and this is the one graph you want to be heading in the other direction compared to the other ones. You want to see this graph continue to go up. We are above the national benchmark for our compliance with our sepsis bundle. That means our staff and our physicians are doing a good job of identifying sepsis early and aggressively treating it to lower morbidity and mortality in those patients. So the second example, and I mentioned this a little bit, of our partnership with UNC is our heart program. We have been recently recognized by the American College of Cardiology and the American Heart Association for not only the programs that we run and the protocols and the pathways, but through partnerships with EMS, the fire department, other first responders, in identifying patients with heart attacks and then lessening the amount of time it takes to open or reperfuse those arteries in the heart. And so we've been recognized with that as a partnership amongst the community. It's really a community award, and we do that through a partnership not only with Boyce Willis, but also with the School of Medicine at UNC. And so you'll continue to hear good things about how we're continuing to expand this program. Over the last several weeks, we have been in dialogue with a physician through the UNC system and our connections about bringing out some new procedures and enhancing some services here in Nash County. And so we're going to continue to expand this program for you. And then the third example of our partnership with UNC is through our cancer care program. You know, we opened our new cancer center and have comprehensive cancer care. Through our partnership with UNC, we're able to participate in their cancer conferences, which is like grand rounds. Physicians, staff get together and talk about patient care, best practices and protocols, pathways, and any trials. Through our association with UNC, we're able to bring trials that they're conducting at UNC back out here to Nash County and offer it to Nash County residents and patients without them having to travel the hour and a half to UNC. If you've either had a loved one treated with cancer or you've been treated for cancer, you know what a drain that is on your energy and what a long, arduous day that whole event can be. And so being able to have it here in our local community is certainly a blessing for us. And then our financial turnaround plan is no secret that in fiscal year 2018, which ended June 30th, we lost from operations about $25 million. The board and the finance committee told us that they had no more patience for that operation and wanted us to improve. This is just, we relaunched what we're calling our financial improvement plan. So if you speak to me or Sean Hartley, who's our Chief Financial Officer, and we mentioned the 2020 plan. Just want you to know that that's our word for the financial recovery plan. And so we've gotten that approved by the board at last month's meeting, and we're rolling that out. A couple of things that we've already put in place. We believe that we've identified about $11.5 million that we're able to cut out of the operating loss this year. So what did we do? This is just looking from calendar year 12 to fiscal year, and just simply, we used to be on calendar year, and then once we affiliated with UNC, we switched over to fiscal year. So that's why there's a little bit of difference. And you can see since fiscal calendar year 12 was the last time that the health system made money from its operating income. And we've been in this kind of downward spiral, ending at 25.8 million, where the board and the finance committee said enough and asked for improvements. We simply said, hey, let's start this journey, because it didn't take us 1 year to get into it. It's not going to take us 1 year to get out of it. Let's start by just hitting where we were in 2017. That was just 18 months ago. Not that much has changed. We didn't see a change in payer mix. We didn't see a change in volume. We just saw some changes in how we operated, and we thought we could easily go back to 2017. So the blue bar here is simply if we did nothing, our projections of what we thought our operating income would do, which was continue to slide. And the green bar that is above it is our projection of the 2020 or the financial recovery plan as we go through, with the projections of a positive operating income projected for fiscal year 2023.
Could you say a little bit more how you intend to change that? More operation, less operations?
That's an excellent question. Let's see if, I'm gonna lead into it. Give me 2 slides and I'll answer your question. How about that, sir? So you asked the same question that the finance and the board asked, that said, we've seen this financial recovery plan before. What makes this different? And so I'm gonna try to answer that for you. So this is the other one that we look at is cash flow. So this is just simply how much money we bring in versus how much it costs us to simply operate the health system on a day-to-day basis. We call it the cash flow statement. You can see that if we achieve our 2020 plans, that will start being positive cash flow about $6 million in fiscal year 19, and by 2020 about $14 million, so that we can reinvest in the organization, our workforce, and our community. So for this fiscal year, the board, I asked the board to give us about $1.5 million worth of emergency capital that will replace things that might break, necessary items, but it's not for new items. 2020, we've got to be able to reinvest in new areas. We've got to grow and continue to expand and make sure that our work environment and our patient care environment is conducive for good care. And so that's the reason that this cash flow statement is important, because this is how much money we have to reinvest in the organization. So, to your question, sir, what makes this different? So a couple of things, we broke it down into 4 areas. Contract management, expense management. These are things that we control every day as leadership of the hospital. We decide how many accountants we're going to bring in. We decide how many individuals we're going to have working with us. And we base that off of industry data. We benchmark that off of other productivity metrics. Revenue cycle, that's just simply collecting what we charge and what we bill for. And we've had some areas of opportunity. Epic is going to help us in that. And then, to your point about is it growing some business, there is some business growth, and we think in this year about $2.9 million worth of business growth will help us reduce the budget loss by $11.3 million. So this is spread out over several areas, but 70% of this is expense management, which is in our control. And you can hold me accountable, you can hold the executive team accountable for the expense management, because we make these decisions every day on how we're going to operate the system. So,
You know, nationwide, I've read where hospitals, some of them are performing surgery that's not needed in order to boost that revenue. If it's not needed, that's why I asked that question. I mean, if it's not needed, it certainly ought not to be done. Because it
Absolutely.
could have some after effects later on in
That's
their life.
absolutely, and so all procedures have to be verified with the insurance company. So we have to get those pre-approved. And so if you've ever been involved in that process, you know that sometimes that can be quite arduous to get those insurance companies to approve those procedures.
If they
So
don't approve, they don't pay.
that's right, absolutely, and so those are some of the measures. And again, I think to your point, sir, that's why only about 16% is in revenue growth. And so it's through ED visits. We know there's some opportunity there, some inpatient. For example, what we were seeing in the last fiscal year was that our observation status was climbing, but our length of stay was remaining the same. And that just, to me, means that there were some patients that probably met inpatient criteria that we weren't categorizing correctly. And the difference is that an inpatient is probably about $3,000 worth of revenue. An observation patient is about $300 worth of revenue. So it's not about doing something that's not needed. It's about capturing the business that's already there and making sure we're doing a good job with it.
Lee, how do you, when you try to increase your business, how do you increase the business on the side of paying customers without the side of non-paying customers increasing at the same time, which to me seems to be an awful hard nut to crack?
It is a balance, and as you know, sir, I can't target or decline care. So one of those things that we do is we keep a close eye by service line on payer mix. And if we see services continuing to go up, but we see their payer mix changing, that is not beneficial for the organization, then we go out and we try to find out and identify the reasons for that. And so certainly we want to keep out migration to a minimum, and that just simply means individuals in Nash County leaving Nash County for their health care. And so we want to keep that to a minimum, and we believe that the individuals who generally out-migrate or go somewhere else are the individuals who have the ability to pay, have an insurance. And so we want to make sure that we're, and so we look at those numbers, we look at payer mix, and we have not seen the payer mix dramatically change in the last several years, which is a positive. And then these are the areas that the dollars are coming from. So we're looking across the board. We've identified about $14 million for this year. We've got about $2 million left to identify. We've got 25 initiatives out there without any dollar amounts assigned to them. So we've got some things in the bank and in reserve. The one area that always catches everyone's attention that I want to make sure I point out is the nursing department is targeted at $3.68 million. The first thing finance and the board said was you can't take away bedside care and compromise quality through trying to save a dollar. And so one of the efforts, and I know Ian spoke to you a year ago, we had about 75 to 80 contract nurses inside the organization. Today, we have 25 contract nurses, which is, and we're continuing to head in the right direction. Contract nursing are good people. They do a good job, but they're not ours. They are transient, and they don't know the system, and they're not consistent. So it just, they've got some things working against them. In addition to that, we pay an outside agency who then pays them. So,
I think that's a positive area to be looking at.
So we know that through the efforts of reducing 50 contract nurses and hiring our own nurses, that we've probably saved And we've also changed the compensation for our nurses this last year. Even with all that, there's about $4.5 million worth of savings after we've done all of that, just in comparison between what we pay our nurses internally versus what it costs us to have a contract nurse. We've taken $3 million of that in this fiscal year. So we've left a little bit on the table just in case we were wrong in our math. But Sean Hartley's very good with his math, and I trust that he is closer to the 4 or 5 million. But we wanted to be conservative so that we could hit our mark. And so 3 million of that 3.6 is really contract nursing and measures that the board, decisions that the board made in actual physical 18 that are now feeling the positive effects in fiscal year 19. And then we always talk a little bit about cash days on hand. That's an industry discussion. That just simply means how many days could the hospital operate without receiving a single payment, not one penny, and pay all our bills, our staff, buy our medications, and continue to have patients be able to come through the door. And so I will tell you, Nash UNC Healthcare is a very strong organization. We are here as long as you and the community want us here. We have 370 days of cash on hand. That means we could operate for 370 days without ever receiving a payment. The benchmark in the industry is about 100 days to 125 days. So we're 3 times what a healthy hospital would have in the bank. So we're here as long as you want us here. And what we have to do, and Sean will tell you this when you speak to him, is we're not a bank, we're a hospital. So we have to survive through our operations. So we can't rest on this, and we have to make sure that we have sound operations and that we can continue to put money into the bank and invest it into the community and into the care that we provide. And so the yellow line is with the 2020 financial recovery plan, and then the orange line is the trend if we didn't do anything at all. And so that's certainly not heading in the right direction because over the last couple of years, we started using our cash. One of the things that I promised the board and I promise you is that we will never spend more money than we bring in. So that's why our capital budget this year is only $1.5 million. An organization our size should have a capital budget of about $5 to $8 million. We can only do this for 1 or 2 years, and then we've got to be able to reinvest in the organization. So the board has given me a year to get operations back to where they need to be, and then if I don't get them back there, they'll deal with me, and we'll have another conversation. But I want you to know that it's a strong health system, and we're going to be able to take care of the needs of our community for a very long time. So a couple things through fiscal year 19. This is just 2 months. But some of the things that we're seeing inpatient volume trending up. Our total surgeries are about 1% over last year. ED visits are up over last year. And our net revenue is up about 3% the prior year. Our operating income is about $1.4 million favorable to budget. So we're doing better than we had anticipated through the first 2 months of about $1.4 million. So it's early. Certainly, I wouldn't cast this in stone, but certainly as you asked for me to bring you measurements and benchmarks back, this is certainly a start. Be glad to answer any questions for you and certainly appreciate you allowing me to be here with you today.
There are 3 areas here in the Twin Counties. Maybe you can just say East and North Carolina. Diabetes is pretty much an epidemic. Heart disease, kidney disease. Those are 3 areas where we ought to be super in my opinion.
Well, I will tell you that I think the hearts, we're well on our way. I think dialysis and kidneys, we've got some very good and sound nephrologists that are doing very good work. We've got an inpatient dialysis unit there at the hospital that we're able to take care of patients' needs while they're with us. So I think we're well on our way. And then diabetes is really it's really North Carolina, but certainly rural North Carolina and eastern North Carolina we continue to battle with that, as all hospitals and health systems do across the
Yeah.
state.
Well, you were talking about the number of days you can operate with no money coming in. Have you tracked up to this point how many days Nash Healthcare has had where no money at all
Oh,
came in?
No money comes in every day, and there's cycles. Medicaid's every 2 weeks, Medicare's once a month. Insurance companies pay on a cycle per payer, and so we've never had a period. We just talk about that in theory, if no money came in, but money's coming in every day into the health system.
Lee, on that note, I will say that you got a lot more days than the county had that you could operate, but your percentage versus the industry standard is the same as what the county's is.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's excellent.
yeah, it is.
So it's important, we want you to know, again, we take this very seriously. There needs to be a strong effort towards it, but we want you to know that it's a strong health system, and we have time to make those improvements for you.
Other board members
I
have
just think
questions?
one thing was, I'm hearing a whole lot more good than I'm hearing bad now. I can tell you, a year and a half ago, I was hearing more bad than I was good.
Well, thank you, and if you hear bad, you
I've already
direct
told
them to
somebody
me.
to call you. They
Yes,
come to
ma'am.
me, I said, and I told them to go to you.
Yes, ma'am.
I told them to go to the top man, not start at the bottom.
I would mention
Mr.
that
Outlaw.
the presentations that Kim Mullen has been making are having an impact out in the community, and we appreciate that.
Yeah, the patient advisory committee is doing amazing work, and certainly, we're very happy to have them out advocating and helping educate the community.
Other questions, comments from board members?
Thank you very much.
Well, certainly, thank you. The only thing I'd ask you to add to your presentation, when you said the board directed for you to turn that around, if you could just make board plural for us.
Oh, yeah, I will, yes, sir.
Thank you for
Thank
that.
you very much.
Lee, would you, tell us who you got with us from your staff today?
Well, I've got my boss, Jim Lilly,
Right.
who is the chairman.
Bosses at home.
of the board.
Right, Jim.
And then Davis Green is with me today. He is the Director of Clinical Operations. He joined us about 3-4 months ago. He finished up his fellowship at UNC and wanted to be in community medicine and community healthcare delivery. And so we were fortunate enough to convince him that Nash County was where he needed to be and to be here with us. And so a bright young man who's done a lot of things in his early career, and so I see very good things for him. So thank you for allowing me to introduce him.
Mr. Lamb, if you would just go through and let Lee know who we have on our staff here as
Okay.
well, so, cause he probably hadn't met a lot of them.
Okay, I'm Corsi Lamb. We've got Stacy Schatzer. She's our assistant county manager. Our county attorney, not really on staff. He's on retainer.
He's on
I'm as
staff.
good as we pay him.
Yeah. Vince Durham. And then we've got Donna Wood as our finance officer. And we've got Scott Rogers, you may have met, with EM, and Mr. Hill with the health department, and Brian Brantley with emergency management, and Mr. Fisher with emergency management. And our great PIO photographer, Jonathan Edwards. And then the men in the back. They protect us.
They sent two today. You
I
know,
see,
I
I see.
sent-
Oh, I'm sorry. The most important person,
Right.
Janice Evans, the clerk to the board and administrative assistant.
Right.
And all the commissioners would agree with that
You
statement.
better believe that.
Thank y'all a lot for being here. Thank you for what you're doing. It was a great presentation. I think we all feel considerably better, Jim, than we did when we started these conversations a few years ago. They weren't fun then, they are beginning to be fun again. Good news is always better than not so good news. Your capital budget this year is amazing to me. I was just tell you, it's something that you already know, is they spent all the money before you got here, Lee. But,
Mr. Lilly has asked me to be a good steward of
Yep.
those resources.
yep. Thank you again. You're welcome to stay with us if you like, or you're welcome to leave if your schedule needs for you to do that.
Well, I'm gonna have to step out, but I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you.
very much.
Yep,
Thank you for coming.
In his league, he's got things to go, right?
yep.
Problems to solve. Thank y'all.
Next item on the agenda, is number 4, presentation by Chief Dennis Williams with the Stony Creek Rescue Squad. I used him to be our inside presenter because many times during the day and many times during the night, he indeed is an inside participant in what goes on in Nash County. Welcome, Dennis.
Thank you very much. I do appreciate the opportunity to come and to speak before you and to represent an organization that I'm as proud of as anything, and that's the Stony Creek Volunteer Rescue Squad. Before I can actually tell you where we are and where we're heading, I'd like to kind of run down a little, and I can't say brief because I asked a while ago, how much time did I have? They said, well, about 10 minutes. Well, I'm a preacher. And you know what 10 minutes means when the preacher says, we're about to end this today? You take your shoes off and get comfortable again. But anyway, I do appreciate the opportunity to come. And Stony Creek had its basic beginning back in 1955. Those of you from the Rocky Mount area may remember when Buck Overton's restaurant was out on Sunset Avenue. And one afternoon in 1955, Buck was out looking out his back door through the woods across Stony Creek and saw his bright glow in the sky. So he knew his home was over that way, so he jumped in his car and took off toward the house, and the closer he got to his home, the brighter the glow was. Well, as he rounded the curve and topped the hill, he breathed a little sigh of relief because it wasn't his home, but it was a vacant 2-story house across the street, and it was fully involved. Well, in 1955, the closest fire departments was Brattleboro and Nashville. And of course, it was 30-some minutes before the first truck arrived on scene, and it was a total loss for the home. Well, with Buck Overton and Ed Stallings and several other businessmen and some farmers, they got together and they said there's a need here in this portion of the county to have a volunteer fire department because it was outside the city, and at that time the city would not cross the line to go into the county. So for about a year, they met with Brattleboro and they met with Nashville and several other agencies and come up with a plan to establish Stony Creek. In 1956, the Stony Creek Fire Association was incorporated. Well, they built the new building, and at the corner of what was Bienvenue and Barnum Road at that time, the first fire truck they purchased was a 1956 Model B Mack. It was en route to Florida on a train bed. It fell off the train in Rocky Mount. The Mack dealership bought it, fixed it, painted it from that horrible military green to a fire truck red, and that's where our first fire truck came from. So 1960 showed a great need in this area for a rescue squad. There was nothing viable in our area. So the civil defense back then was real big into looking out for its communities. So they got in contact with civil defense, and they provided the first rescue truck for Stony Creek, which made in 1960 Stony Creek Volunteer Fire Department and Rescue Squad. Well, as time went on, 1965 rolled around and they decided there was a need for an ambulance service. Before that time, if you needed an ambulance, you would call a number and a hearse would pull up in front of your house, and one person would come and load you up in the back of the hearse, and they would take you to the hospital. There was no attendants in the back, it was just a transport. So Stony Creek got into the ambulance business and purchased in 1966, purchased a 1963 Cadillac from a funeral home, had it painted from black to red, put a red light on it, and so the ambulance service for Stony Creek was birthed in 1966. 1970 brought the first contract that Stony Creek signed with Nash County, with the commissioners, to provide ambulance service for our portion of Nash County. In 1973, the birth of the emergency medical technician was coming about. Before then, it was a standard Red Cross certification that you could get, and that basically taught you how to put a bandage on or splint a leg, and that was about the extent of it. But in '73, the North Carolina Emergency Medical Technician course was offered in eastern North Carolina, and it was taught at Stony Creek. We became the first squad in eastern North Carolina to provide this level of care. 1974, a pilot program was introduced where they could start IVs outside of the hospital rim, and Stony Creek stepped up again and began, and again in eastern North Carolina, Stony Creek was the first one certified at emergency medical technician IV levels. In 1976, Stony Creek again was at the forefront of the EMS capabilities by having some of the first intermediates in eastern North Carolina at our department. Keep in mind that all this time, the fire department and fire service was continuing to grow. I don't know how many of you realize it, but the fire service began, the first fire chief was Benjamin Franklin. So the fire service has got a lot longer lifeline than what the emergency medical services has. But we continue to grow. Stony Creek had the first Jaws of Life for Nash County, and as we expanded our rescue services, we also expanded with the fire service. 1983 brought about the paramedic program for Nash County, and again, Stony Creek was at the forefront of providing Nash County with the paramedic care, which is no ways back then what the level of it is today. In 1996, Stony Creek lost its fire department certifications and fire institution part due to the growth of the city of Rocky Mount. And of course, when that went out, went our fire tax districts that we were getting from the county. During this time, Stony Creek EMS was continuing to grow. We had 3 locations at this time. We had the original one on Country Club Road, we had one in Sharpsburg, right outside of Sharpsburg, and one in Whitakers. Many of you were around in July 1st, 2006. That's when Nash County took over the full-time EMS operations for Nash County, and Stony Creek lost its full-time and part-time paid staff and only supplied the county with volunteer EMS services during this time with 2 ambulances while still maintaining our rescue services and our search and recovery dive team. January 2016, every year, well, I became chief in 2008. I joined Stony Creek in 1971 at the age of 13. So I've seen some changes come along in the county through those years. But in January 2016, after I became chief in 2008, we instituted a officers training course every year and give us a chance to look back over the previous year to see maybe what we didn't do so well, to evaluate what we did do that we thought was well and apply it to the coming year. From 2008 up to 2016, just about every year, the request had been made for Stony Creek to go back to a paramedic level, and I always turned it down because I did not feel we had the right people in place to maintain such a qualification and a certification level. Well, in 2016, at that time, I had a EMS assistant chief and an EMS captain, and they presented their plans to take Stony Creek back to a paramedic level. See, operating at a basic level or at a intermediate level, anytime we received an ambulance call, Nash County or Nash EMS would have to also dispatch an ambulance in case it was a paramedic level call. They may have come from Cooper's area, they may have come from the Spring Hope, Momire area, wherever it was coming from, which took another truck out of the operations for Nash EMS. So it was presented then to go back to a paramedic level, and feeling that the time was right and personnel was right, I gave my approval. So working very close with Nash EMS, with Brian Brantley and Scott Rogers and Scott Strufy, a lot of man hours and man time went into bringing Stony Creek back to a paramedic level squad. We are located, I don't know if you know our building, but we're located in a prime location to be able to assist the Rocky Mount area, Brattleboro, Red Oak, Westmount, Sharpsburg. We're in a prime location to be able to come and to offer assistance in any way needed, whether it's EMS, whether it's rescue, whether it's search and recovery dive team. And this has always been our heart. I believe from the very onset for Stony Creek, it's never been about Stony Creek. It's always been about what we can do for our fellow man or our fellow person, okay? A lot of times in EMS, fire, rescue, emergency services, we're kind of referred to as the local heroes or the hometown heroes. But let me tell you who I think the real heroes in this situation is. I think it's our spouse and our families. Because when maybe my wife has prepared a meal or she's brought in folks for feeding at my house and my pager goes off and I run out the door and leave her. And folks, we've all we've dodged the bullet thanks to the good Lord over these last 2 hurricanes. But I left my wife at home to fend for herself to go to the station to prepare to go out and serve others. So that takes me out of the limelight and puts her and our families out there. And I believe that's the real heroes that we need to look at. You know, whether you're paid to be there or whether you volunteer to be there, the folks that we leave behind to fend for themselves, these are the real heroes that's out there in this world today. But on January the 2nd, September the 14th of 2017, the North Carolina Office of Emergency Medical Emergency Services came to Stony Creek and recertified Stony Creek back to a paramedic level squad, which made us one of the very few volunteer organizations at a paramedic level in the state of North Carolina. Shortly after that, there was a lot of meetings between myself, my staff, Scott Rogers, Brian Brantley, his office, on setting up this operation, because a lot of stuff throughout Nash County had to be reconstrued and rewrote. And my hat's off to Brian and his staff for stepping in and helping us with the endless hours that they did to achieve what we set a goal back out to be able to do. Well, one of the meetings, I was with Scott Rogers, and he brought up the question. He said, have you considered putting part-time staff back in Stony Creek? And of course, my response was absolutely not. I know what it's like dealing with paid staff, dealing with the government, dealing with taxes, dealing with insurance and all this stuff. But we began to throw it around a little bit, and we began to talk, and I talked with my officers. And January the 2nd, 2018 of this year, Stony Creek started again with its paid staff covering EMS services Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. So we've come a long way just bringing the paramedic program back to Stony Creek over the last basically 2 years. Today, Stony Creek, we still maintain the largest rescue district in Nash County. We maintain 3 rescue vehicles. We have 3 ambulances now. We just bought a 3rd one and put it in service. And we have 3 boats, and again, we have a fully staffed search and recovery dive team. We have 7 divers on our team, and 5 of these are registered as master divers in public safety diving. During the 2017-2018 fiscal year, we received support from Nash County that totaled $52,700. And ladies and gentlemen, let me tell you from the bottom of my heart, I appreciate everything that y'all do for us, and not only Stony Creek, but what you do for Nash County. I talk to chiefs in different places as we travel around and stuff, and I'll guarantee you that most of the people I talk to do not have the support that we find here in Nash County. And you guys are to be commended for what you do for all of us, not just Stony Creek, but for every volunteer agency in Nash County. But we received $52,700 from Nash County to help with our operational expenses. During 2017 fiscal year, our operating expenses totaled $186,321.31. That's quite a bit of money for a volunteer organization. We don't have new vehicles. We just purchased another ambulance. It was a used vehicle. It was remounted in 2011. But I can stand before you today and tell you Stony Creek don't owe nobody a dime. Everything we have is completely paid for.
She's serving a larger area,
Yes, sir.
with more people.
Yes, sir. We
That's the
absolutely,
reason.
we
That's the
do.
reason for it.
We, again, being a standalone rescue squad, we don't have a fire tax budget to draw from as the other three squads do. Being able to run EMS calls as we do has helped supply our needs. Also, being able to get some of the taxes back from the state and the government that we pay has helped. But we don't operate off of a want and a needs budget. We operate strictly off of a needs budget. We just purchased 3 pieces of equipment for our rescue truck and paid $22,000 for 3 pieces of equipment to be able to go and do extrication for out in the field. Many of you know Keith Harris, used to be the fire chief for the city of Rocky Mount. When Keith was the chief, I met with him one day and I told him, I said, Chief, being a volunteer organization, there's no way I can guarantee you or our district 24/7 rescue capabilities because we're volunteer. And he said, Chief, let me tell you something. He said, I run 2 rescue trucks in the city of Rocky Mount, and there's no way I can guarantee 24/7 rescue operations either. He said, because my first line of defense is fire suppression. So if they have a structure fire and they send 2 engine companies, a ladder company, 2 rescue companies, and a battalion chief, they suspend first responder responses. So if I'm a volunteer rescue squad and they've got 2 rescue trucks tied up and there's a pin inside the city of Rocky Mount, there's a good chance that nobody's going, unless that fire truck that happens to go for fire suppression has some tools on it. That's a drawback and a disadvantage of being a volunteer squad. Used to, we had farmers that we could draw from that lived close by the station. Now all of us, the folks that we have, is just like me. I work a full-time job. I have family, and I still volunteer my time at Stony Creek. We pay $32,000 a year right now just for insurance. Workers' comp, vehicle insurance, building insurance. So you can see it's a highly expensive business to be into. But I think we're in it today because I know we're in it today because we love what we do. Folks, volunteerism is a dying breed. It's not just Nash County, it's not just North Carolina. You can see it across this country. Being a volunteer is a dying breed. And I pray we never see the day that there's not any more volunteers around, that we're able to maintain what we're doing. I think we offer a great service to Nash County. Was meeting with Mr. Lamb one day, and he said, you know, matter of fact, I believe it was said in one of the association meetings, with what Nash County pays out for fire, EMS, and rescue coverage across the county, guys, we get, you get, and me as a citizen, we get a great benefit from what is being paid out. If everything, every department, every vehicle, every piece of insurance, everything that was going on across this county was on a complete paid level, it would be an astronomical amount that the county would have to fund every year. So where are we going from here at Stony Creek? Well, I would very love to see us be able to increase our part-time paid staff, our hours that we man Monday through Friday, and also add on Saturday and Sunday. I think the need is there, but we can only take baby steps as we grow this thing. I would love to put paid staff on my rescue truck, but you can see what we pay out and what we have coming in at this time. That is a distinct impossibility, but it's a need that's there. And also, one of the things that we want to do in the future is to be able to grow everything that we do, reach out more for community programs. The fire service over the years has done a fantastic job. They've almost put themselves out of business, reaching the public with fire prevention. And I think one of the weaknesses we have in emergency services or emergency medical services is we're not reaching out as much to John Doe citizen and explaining to them how they can make things around their home safer, how they can drive safer, how they can operate safer. And I think that would be a great thing to be able to do, to be reach out, at least start in our community and make it spread from there. In our truck bay, as you come from the truck bay that goes into our training room, there's a sign over the door that some of you has been in our department has seen. It says, "Through these doors have passed some of the most well-trained and most dedicated men and women that this world has ever known." We've seen people come through the doors of Stony Creek, such as Scott Rogers, okay? We've seen Mike Moss, meteorologist, Channel 5, U.S. Marshals, doctors, lawyers, flight nurses. There's been a lot of people that's come through our doors that's gone on to other areas in other parts of their lives. And I'd like to think somewhere along the way, Stony Creek has made a positive mark on their life. I know we reach people every day when we come into contact with them, and it's usually at the worst time of their life. Sometimes we're their only lifeline. But when we can walk away and we can think, well, you know, we've done the very best we can do, then that's what gives us gratitude. And again, I appreciate everything that you guys do for us. I appreciate the opportunity to come and speak. And if there's any questions that you have that I might be able to answer, I'll be glad to. And I've tried to make it just as quick as possible.
Any questions from Commissioners, Mr. Williams?
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dennis.
Thank you.
Item number 5, Mr. Hill, debris removal. I will tell you, when I printed my agenda, particularly that package, sometimes the lady that works up front picks up stuff on the copy, which is up front, bringing it to me. When she handed it to me, she said, "Go with number 6. I'll let you figure it out with that." Go ahead, sir.
Hannah.
What's that?
Hannah, he said.
Oh, that's it. We do have the key thing to remember. This is a pre-event.
Right.
Thank goodness. It's a pre-event contract, and now we have some different FEMA requirements. Heretofore, we could piggyback off of a municipality or surrounding county. And Rocky Mount has had a long-standing pre-event contract, and that typically, that is where we piggyback it. Use their prices, use their contract to use their debris removal company. But FEMA does not allow for piggybacking anymore. And I tell you, we, as the chief said a while ago, or someone else said, we had a close couple of events here with Florence and Michael. And thank goodness we didn't need a debris removal contract, but we did send out 4 requests for formal or informal quotes on the Florence event, and got 2 back. Were prepared, but we didn't need them. But again, this is a pre-event contract. You received this information in your packet. We sent this out, I believe it was emailed to 8 companies on September 24th, 2018. It was also on the website and in local newspapers. We picked up 9 interested companies who sent back sealed bids. And incidentally, this RFP is 18 pages long. It's very comprehensive. It's got a number of price pages, about 16 different categories of pricing. Our 5 or 6 important areas that are weighted would certainly be C&D, construction demolition pickup, yard debris pickup, demolishing damaged structures, homes, garages, buildings, etc. Also tub grinding, and of course the white goods that come out of these structures so many times. We, as I said, we received 9 that they are listed here. They're from Topeka, Kansas, Florida, Mississippi, Alabama, a lot of different locations. Our evaluation committee, I certainly would like to point out these bids, these sealed bids came in on October the 8th, I believe, a week ago today, to finance. They came into the finance department, so I really do appreciate Donna Wood, Melanie doing what they did to receive these sealed bids on October 8th, again, a week ago yesterday. But this evaluation committee we formed, kind of an impromptu ad hoc committee. Of course, Scott Rogers, I don't know, Brent Fisher, is here, Donna Wood, and Melanie East and myself served on this committee to go through the 9 proposals we received. And I think one of the, of course, we met twice. I met once the second time with them. They met ahead of time, but we met. They met twice, or we met twice. And one of the things they really did after we got the 9 in is how do we eliminate how do we at least eliminate the ones that really do not seem to be in the ballpark as far as prices, qualities, are they fly-by-nights, etc. I don't think any of these companies were really fly-by-nights, but some obviously had more experience and were better than other companies. So we did go down to 4 companies, from 9 to 4, after about 30 minutes of discussion and looking at criteria. Having mentioned criteria, I will say that the criteria was based, and that was in your packet, we gave it a weight of 35% for price, another 30% for qualifications, that's real experience in dealing with man-made or natural disasters, 25% with technical know-how. How much has the companies stayed up with technology and maybe ahead of the curve with technology, from drones that are used where boats and cars can't travel, to computerized access and screens to look at the different debris with satellite imaging. Our committee, again, went through. We did add 2 to that 4, I believe, at the end of the week, 2 more companies, so we had 6. And we then independently scored, gave points to, of that 35, that's broken down in 3 or 4 different areas, and of the 30 points for qualification, or 30%, that's broken down into several areas, and 25% for the technical. Bottom line, with 10% or 10 points of the 100 points, we gave all the 4 or 6 companies, because they did complete the applications, so they did meet that requirement. We then looked at, and I'm about to finish this, we looked at companies with a lot of experience, as I mentioned, but companies that have pre-existing contracts in North Carolina. Scott Rogers brought this to our attention. The company that had the largest number was Crowder Gulf with 21. I think the second might have been DRC with 11 or 12 companies, counties or municipalities. And then we looked at a number of other things that had to do with where companies are existing. We also saw where Crowder Gulf, of course, had been in Rocky Mount for years. They've been in Edgecombe in the city of Wilson for years. So they usually set up a headquarters. They have 2 standby subcontractors, at least in the Nash County area, ready to activate. Having said all this, after looking at this criteria, including the technology, the pricing, etc., we recommend to the board, as a committee, that you authorize to go with Crowder Gulf as our pre-event contract. I should mention this would be a 5-year contract. That's what they typically are. It's allowed in this contract to annually renew annually at the end of 5 years, so it does have an annual renewal rate if both parties agree to that. But this would be a 5-year pre-event contract. What does it cost? Nothing. Hope it doesn't cost anything if you don't have a storm or have a debris removal need. But it's there for us. It also doesn't catch us flat on our heels or feet. When you have a storm event, you've already got quotes, you've already got FEMA approved this sort of contract, that you've done your pricing, you've done your sealed bids, etc. One more point I'd like to make that we included in the 10th or 11th hour, maybe a little bit before that, and that might have been Donald Wood's suggestion, I think a good one, was to include the municipalities in this. That doesn't mean they have to be, but in Rocky Mounts already, they already have their pre-existing contract. But we included all and listed all the municipalities like Red Oak, Nashville, Spring Hope, Mobile, these other municipalities. So, in an event, if they get caught flat-footed, they could come back to say, we want to piggyback. It's not piggyback. That's the term we can't use anymore. But they're included in this contract if they accept this company and the prices that we've already accepted. So I'll be glad to answer the questions for you. There were 16 different categories of pricing. But a lot of them, some of them had to do with places like the beach with mud and silt removal that we don't really utilize much in this county. Typically, our last storm, big storm, was 2011, I think, with Irene. And we did have Crowder Gulf at that time. Edgecombe did, and Wilson did, and City of Rocky Mount. We brought in $1.1 million in tipping fees at the landfill. We paid out about $250,000 to the debris removal company. But we were able to piggyback off Rocky Mount at that time. So the last real big event, I think, was Irene in 2011. Hope it'll be that long again before we have another one.
Any questions, Mr. Hill, on this item? Mr. Bill?
In evaluating, I noticed you used 35% price. So what did you do? Your committee, did look at charges that they're made in other contracts that they have already removed debris?
No, so we looked at what they submitted us. The 9 companies submitted us actual prices for what they would do it for. For
Well, the
example,
one you're recommending, what price did they submit?
they submitted a number of prices. Let me show you how that goes. When you looked at it, we had a sheet with 16 different categories of prices. Again, about 5 or 6 are weighted more for Nash County. But for example, it'd be $7 a cubic yard, one company, $10.50 grubs, $9.75. A TFR submitted $6. The actual company we selected was not the very best in price. They were close. There were 3 that were really close. We had, I don't know if it's TFR or it was another, but we had, they were not the very best, so they did not win the scoring with the pricing. But when we looked at quality, when we looked at 49 years of service, we also looked at Crowder Gulf that presented a drone technology where they had elaborate technology and drone capabilities and what do they call GoPro technology to be able to go into areas where boats and cars couldn't go. The overall rating, when we scored the 6 companies, we came up with a higher score when you looked at price, qualification, etc. But each of them did submit prices or quotes that they need to live with.
Cubic yards of debris.
Yes.
What was theirs?
Crowder Gulf said they could pick up, now this would be C&D at $8 a yard. When you looked at vegetative $8 at yard debris, if you looked at the demolishing, let's say a tree has gone through a building or a home. At this one, each one of them charged by the ton. Crowder Gulf said they would remove it, go onto the premises, remove the rest of that structure, and take it to our landfill by $89 a ton. Looks Great Service said they'd do it for $150 a ton. DRC, a very big company, and our 3 or 4 that we really looked at, narrowed it to, said $119 a ton. There was a company, though, that said, Grubb said they'd do it for $65 a ton. But most of them, and then D&J said $195. They were across the board, pretty much. The company we select or recommending, Crowder Gulf, said they'd do it for $89 a ton. They were on the lower profile of the charges for those. When you looked at tub grinding, another one that we seriously looked at, they said that, which number is tub grinding? I left my glasses at the office.
Somebody else in here has, Ms. Lewis.
I don't think I have the breakdown.
Let's see.
But if I could just add, if you don't mind, Bill. The prices, there were so many, we had 16 different areas of pricing. And so it wasn't just one price for a specific, there's so many different areas with debris removal that we had to take into consideration. And we tried to, it's difficult, to look at it and just say, here's the one price. We tried to take it in different categories, look at it in different ways. And so coming up that's why we couldn't just evaluate based on price. We had to give it different qualifications. So it was price, the technical ability and things like that, because prices were so close. And depending on the amount of debris that has to be removed, it could vary. And so we had a difficult time just with looking at it specifically for a price.
I see now where they say they do it for $4.15 a cubic yard, that grind, and that's an option. You can either decide to take that at the end of the contract or not. It's a pretty good option if you got FEMA paying for it, to go ahead and grind that yard debris up and not use up all that landfill. But we've got something like DRC said they'd do it for $4.45. And they were a very close competitor of this company, Crater Gulf, and Crater Gulf said they'd do it for $4.15.
Mr. Lamb, you
Yeah, I'd just like to let everybody know that when Florence came, and before it turned south, we realized that new rules prevented us from bootstrapping, or whatever you call it. Piggybacking.
That we'd always do it.
On Rocky Mount, and I'd like to thank Ms. Wood and Mr. Hill. They spent a lot of time putting this RFP, RFQ, whatever you want to call it. I'd say it's a hybrid, together, and really got things going quick. I will say that each of those evaluation committee members did separate evaluations, not as a group, but individually, and based on past experience and price, Crowder Gulf was the unanimous choice. So we would, if there are no more questions, we would ask y'all to approve this contract with Crowder Gulf.
Any other questions from board members on it?
Well, I just wanted to know the price, but I'm not saying go to the lowest bidder, because I just got through dealing with removing huge trees out of my yard. And I went with the one that had the technology to get it done and get it done quick. And it costs more.
I tell you, I do remember dealing with a company probably 25 years ago out of Baltimore, Maryland. And we had to stop in the middle of the event. They wouldn't pay us at the landfill. We had to put them on a cash basis. They weren't reliable in lots of areas of the county. And that's a mess when you have to start over after you already got a team on board to try to do it. And I tell you, citizen satisfaction was such a big variable too.
And although I was not involved at all in the selection, didn't recommend anybody to any of the evaluation committees, I have dealt with Crowder Gulf in the past, and I know they're strong. So I think it's a good choice that the committee came up with. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I move for approval of the pre-event contract with Crowder Gulf.
Second.
All right, I have a motion and a second. Any questions on that motion?
I'd just like to thank the committee for all the hard work.
Right. Seeing no questions, all in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries, Mr. Hill. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Next item on the agenda is the courthouse capital project ordinance amendment. Ms. Wood?
This amendment is Amendment 7 to the courthouse capital project ordinance. There were changes to various expenditure line items for construction. I added a line item for renovation, which would include anything outside of the original construction contract, or security system changes that we had to make, and data and telephone line items. And with this adjustment, we had some sales tax refund revenue and also investment earnings that I was able to increase the project revenue. So the project revenue is now $14,244,345, with the $14 million being from our financing. And with these changes, it leaves in contingency $40,000. Are there specific questions on any of the line items? I'd be happy to answer.
Mr. Lynn?
I would just say that, the additional, where you see renovation as an expense, that's pretty much a catch-all for the additional work that we've decided to do and recommend that we do. My authority is $25,000 to do a change order. But after the new section was finished, there were some things that we decided needed to be done. One of them is bulletproof windows on the first floor and on the front as well as on the back, which towards the jail where District Courtroom 2 is, and then also the judges' chambers. We decided that just for extra security, we wanted to make those bulletproof, and so I think, 13, 14 windows are being converted for a price of around $52,000, I believe, plus or minus. We also gonna be doing some disability access work to get from the old courthouse to the new courthouse and vice versa. Some carpet in the old courtroom, renovations for the evidence room in the sheriff's office, and also bulletproof vests, what do you call that, window in the evidence room as well as in the DA's office. And but we feel like we're not increasing the fund balance. The original loan was $14 million, and that remains. We didn't take any money from fund balance. We did rely on the sales tax refunds that as a governmental entity we get, as well as investment earnings, which we had not budgeted previously. The $14 million, as we spend it, was drawing interest, so we're attributing that interest to this project ordinance, so in this project. So thank you. We ask that you approve this capital project ordinance amendment number 7.
I would say y'all have been innovative. Y'all have been innovative in making this sound as good as you can make it sound. Ms. Wood. Mr. Belfield?
Yeah, why wasn't this already in our plan? Because we went through a security and all that. Way before we even started any construction, why we didn't put it in plan?
Mr. Belfield, I would just say as a contractor, this was an extremely complex project. The committee that worked on it did meet many times and covered many items. Once we got it open, there were some things that were not taken care of, and really weren't anticipated to particularly be needed. We had a rather lengthy meeting, about maybe a month ago with all the stakeholders that are now operating in the building, and let them bring to us a list of anything where they felt that we not necessarily overlooked, but things that needed to be done. We worked through that list. We approved some to be in this change order, some we didn't approve, but it has been a pretty lengthy process, and I'll just say, no architect is perfect, and some things you just couldn't see. I'm pleased that we are still within the budget. We still got some contingency left. I'm excited I was a little bit intrigued
Those are two
on.
key things that should have been in there at the beginning.
Such
Bulletproof
as?
windows and vests should have been in. Well, maybe not
There
vests,
were
but
no-
at least those windows should have
He
been in.
misused the word vest. There's no invest involved in
We
it.
changed that.
Did I say vest?
You did to start with, but you corrected it. There were no vest involved in it. It was
Okay,
strictly,
But I thought I heard vest.
he did say vest, but then he corrected it to a window at the magistrate's office and somewhere else. I'm not sure.
And the one place, we could have put bulletproof windows throughout, but
But I'm talking about the most needed ones.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know what
Medina
we did.
went through them all, and the most glaring example of, there's 2 sets of stairs outside courtroom 2, district courtroom, that you can actually stand on the outside of the stairs and look through the window and see the judge. So,
Well, the other thing involved here is there's an extremely higher sense of security than it's ever been. I'm sure we don't have any bulletproof glass in the existing courthouse, for example, and there's many places, am I wrong? We have two.
yeah, the front,
Exterior,
Yeah, but anyway,
that was done
the front entrance.
front entrance, right.
Let's try to remember all this next time we build another courthouse.
Well, you're not gonna get it all, I tell you that.
75 years before we build
Mr.
it.
Chairman, I make a motion we approve capital project
And I
orders,
second.
amendment number 7.
Well,
In fairness to the board, are there any more questions on this change order? If not, I have a.
I'm not
excuse me.
against, and I won't vote for it, but it just bothered me why that wasn't in there in the beginning. That's the
I
only
just,
thing.
just ditto what I just explained, Mr. Bell.
Yeah, I understand,
Every time
I
I
understand you
Right.
explain it, I understand that.
Right.
And,
Not true.
I wasn't asking that to be in opposition, I just want us to
That's
be.
true.
As Mr.
And
Outlaw
I
said,
know,
that's,
cause I met one time and we talked about all that stuff.
well, we did have a contingency in this, and that's what a contingency is for on a complex item like that. With no other questions, I have a motion by Commissioner Combs to approve, well, I have a second by
you
Ms.
have a
Wells.
second, okay.
Is there any more questions on the motion, or everybody understand that motion? All in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed by like sign, motion carries, and thank you, Ms. Wood, for being innovative and making it sound as good as it did, man. Hadn't heard sales tax and interest being added back in at that particular point in the project before, but.
She don't work her magic pen.
I ain't kidding you. Yeah, Mr. Outlaw, I'll turn it over to you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would mention to you that, I don't think Robbie has to leave early today, but it is my birthday. And, I would certainly like to get out of here, and it's Mary's anniversary, so we'd like to get out of here at about 4:30 if we possibly could.
Both of us sing happy birthday.
No, that'll be fine. You don't need to do that. But just try to report on items of significance, okay? With that said, Ms. Richardson, District 1.
Due to the storm, Miss Florence coming through last month, we canceled, and we have not met. We'll meet next week.
Thank you, Ms. Richardson. District 2, Commissioner Belfield.
I got two committees that's gonna meet this week. Upper Coast Plain Council of Government tomorrow and the Tar River Transit on Thursday. In the Tar River Transit, we'll be dealing with grants for the fiscal year. The Juvenile Crime Prevention Council did meet, and I'm just gonna say how it relates to Nash County there. The Chief Court Counsel reported that they had 19 complaints from Nash County with juveniles, and only one was placed in detention. And there are different programs that's working with the school system. And we have 9 funded agencies that's working with juveniles in Nash County as well as in Edgecombe County. And that's my report.
Thank you, Mr. Belfield. District 3, Commissioner Combs.
Neither committee's met since the last time we had our mid-month meeting. Health and Human Services Board does meet Thursday.
Great. District 4, Commissioner Barnes.
Well, you all heard from the Nash UNC Health, Healthcare in the presentation, but I would, just like to point out in the email on the September data from Coastal Plain, I saw a significant drop in the opioid use disorder admissions and the HOPE initiative. So I know they've changed protocol. Is that why we're seeing?
That's the effects.
And I'm not all totally up to speed on the whole change, but I know they're using mobile crisis more.
And community paramedic as
And
well.
community paramedics, okay. Maybe we could get a report or a presentation next time or in the next month or two on what's going on with, maybe Amanda or somebody. Yeah, I think so.
Also, things are getting better. It sounds like we're handling it different, maybe.
Now, we've had her in once before
We've
to
already had it this year.
speak to us, but I mean, we could bring her back.
I just, know we were supposed to get a report from the hospital board about coastal plain and the whole new protocol, but it ended up being an email instead of a report. So I don't know if anybody else is interested in hearing about that.
We do not have anything identified for November as far as outside. I would assume that'd be an outside presentation. So you
Okay.
guys think about, anything you might be interested in having for November. I know, some of us just went to the Peacemakers banquet, and I'm kinda interested in that group maybe making a presentation to us as well. I'm really interested in what Peacemakers could do in collaboration with our school system to try to improve,
If
some of the
allowed.
reading skills with our kids. They reported at the Peacemakers banquet, unless I heard wrong, that in like a 7-week period, they improved reading skills by 18 months in 7 weeks. 7 weeks. And I just think there's some lessons to be learned there, and they're doing it with minimal funding, is to the best of my knowledge. But
Yeah, they
that's one I'd like to see us bring in at some point.
They also have a grant from the juvenile council,
Yeah.
that they're working with these juveniles.
Yeah, they're doing a good job.
So the Trillium Board, meeting was canceled because of the hurricane, so we haven't, that's all I have.
Okay, thank you. I do not have anything to report from Nash Community or the RPO, but as you know, we've got a broadband agreement with Cloudwise, and I think the staff held a launch date meeting today, and they discussed a lot of things related to that agreement, and I believe they're also going to be providing us with an online portal for the county to view the pilot program as it progresses, and I think hopefully they identified space for them to come in and warehouse and so forth, office space today. So I talked to Ms. McGee early this morning. I know her daughter was sick, but I think she took care of that and she came in, so hopefully you guys had that meeting today. It went well.
We did, and they need the space, I think, by the 11th of November, so we're working on that.
Ms. McGee will keep us current
Yeah.
as that project progresses, but it is on schedule. Okay, District 6, Commissioner Wells.
Turning Point's actually meeting Thursday night, and Stealth is actually meeting as we're meeting right now, so I have no report.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Wells. District 7, Chairman Davis.
Tourism Development Authority, we have not had a meeting. I do want to invite all the commissioners. I feel like you may have got something to the open house for the travel and tourism over in the Mill Village. It got postponed until the 8th of November at 5 o'clock. Certainly would ask each one of you if you're available to come by then. And Ms. Barnes, that's after the election, so you might be available to come, and Ms. Wells as well. It's a floating event. It's from 5 to 7. And that's at the corner, well, it's directly across the street from the main entrance to the Mill Village. Where it's at. Turned out to be real good. The MPO, we did meet after our last meeting. I really don't have anything significant that we did at that particular meeting, other than we voted on where to put the points for Nash County for the future funding to prioritize the listing of things. It's so complex, I won't try to go into it, but the staff had recommended something. I made one minor change to where our points would go, but if anybody's interested in the details on that, I'll be glad to get that to you. Shell building, I did go out there last week and met with a potential client with Gateway Partnership. It's about 95% complete, except for the exterior work, which I understand that BOT is going back to work on that sometime this coming week, not this week, but the coming week. Building looks great. Contractor did a good job, and the particular firm we met with that day, which was a distribution center, seemed to be relatively interested in that location. I feel we'll have somebody in there pretty soon. Of course, we got a lot of work to do with infrastructure.
Get the road and
We got a lot of work to do with infrastructure, prior to being able to occupy that building. But it is, underway. We're receiving, proposals for engineers to finish up that work, pretty soon. I don't remember the exact date, but we have that proposal out to get, and so we'll be working on those infrastructure two buildings. Gold Rock improvements, really don't have anything to report other than what we reported before. The Gold Rock Inn is officially closed. They actually had an auction this past Saturday and sold all the contents inside of it, prepared for demolition. I just happened to run out there to see what's going on. It was a large crowd of people and an auctioneer selling a whole lot of various things. Stayed around about 30 minutes. It was pretty interesting. The Joint School Board Committee has not met since our last meeting. As we all know, we have a full board meeting this week on the 18th at 5 o'clock. And that location is Nash Community College. And we did move it up to 5 o'clock, so if you would note that instead of when we normally meet at 6 o'clock. And if you have anything, I need to get back with Miss Edge sometime late tonight or in the morning with anything that we want to add to the agenda. So if you got anything, if you try to tell me before you leave today, or at least send me an email about it, that you would want on the agenda today, give me what they've got, which was very minor in items. And so we do have a few we're gonna add on there, but we will be meeting on Monday. That's all I have, Mr. Outlaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I mentioned a couple of things before I turn it back over to you. On the courthouse, at some point, we're gonna have a public tour of the courthouse. We've talked about that, so I know you're gonna be working on that. Also, we sent out information on the Turning Point Workforce Board, asking for recommendations on appointments to that board. If you looked at the information that you received, Ms. Wells, myself, and Mr. Davis have got people that we have recommended be appointed to that board already. So it doesn't matter where they come from, but, you know, we do need someone to appoint to that board by our November meeting. I believe currently.
They really want somebody from industry.
Yeah.
They have a guideline they have to go by.
I
Well,
think what Mr. Outlaw meant there, we've already got somebody from our district.
We do.
We haven't
From your
recommended
district,
anybody for
yes.
this position.
Ms. Wells has actually got two from her district, and I've got one from mine, and Robbie's, the chairman's got one from his district. So we can add another from either one of those districts, but if any of you have anybody that you want to recommend,
Wonderful.
you've got the information, the criteria to serve on the board, the meeting frequency, and so forth. So I would appreciate you give a name to myself or Ms. Wells, and try to get an application in so we can try to close this out at our November meeting. Mr. Chairman, that's all I have.
Okay. All right, anything else to, commissioners want to bring up in open session? Go ahead.
Just need the board members to look at their calendars to see if November the 14th, that's a Wednesday, November the 14th at 10 a.m. would work for a groundbreaking for the Nash County Miracle Park at Cooper's.
I actually was
I have
told the
company
Rotary today that it
at
had
10
already
o'clock.
been set for that day.
There's conflicts with that.
No, I was told at Rotary today that we already had the groundbreaking set for
Well,
that
it was-
time and that date.
It was something that, on some.
Yeah.
Harold,
By
Yes.
By
yes,
Mr.
this
Winston.
morning.
I'm sure you did.
I didn't have it on my calendar. I was wondering why I didn't have it, because he asked me was that the right date, and I looked and I said, yes, that's
Because
the
we were
right
gonna
date.
ask the board.
Yeah,
We're
okay.
gonna ask the board if it worked. Commissioner Belfield, did you say you had a conflict?
Yes, I may be able to do some
I
adjusting.
have a conflict also.
We have already all the Rotary members gonna be there, at that time,
Better not change it then.
but I'll change it. You say you might could work around that, Mr. Belfield?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
I'm gonna be out of town. so.
If I can get out of there and be where I need to be by 11 o'clock,
You can do that.
I'll be okay.
It won't last
Oh,
long, I'm
this
sure.
was a dirt.
Sure.
We know
All right.
where he needs to be.
Well, it's gonna take me.
Yeah, that's a good
It's
question,
gonna-
where you
it's
need to be.
gonna It'll probably take me about 30 minutes to get where I need to be.
I think we can leave there by 10:30. Ms. Mars,
I'll be out of town, out of the country, I hope.
Is that pleasure?
Yeah.
We can't hold up things.
No, go ahead. I'll let Sharon stand in my.
I'm kidding
Make
with
sure
you.
you bring
What's
us
the
some
pleasure,
good
board?
information back from,
That works for me.
Let's do it.
from that country where you.
All right, we'll schedule it with Mr. Barnes' approval for that date and time, 10 o'clock.
Thank you.
And there'll be some kind of agenda set up in advance.
And a ribbon cut.
Yep.
And I know you'll include Mr. Winston. We really need to do that. He's put a lot of money and effort into this thing. Anything else by staff in open session? If not, I do need to have a closed session. Mr. Belfield?
That date again, you said 18th.
14th.
I was getting ready to say, and,
18th is the school board meeting.
No,
It's
okay.
November the 14th.
Okay.
Still okay?
Yeah.
All right, I'd entertain a motion to go into closed session at this time to consult with an attorney on employed or retained by the public body in order to preserve and attorney-client privilege. Actually, I think it's a personnel matter, maybe something else.
so moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. Any questions on the motion? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye. Any opposed by a like sign? Motion carries. We'll take a 5-minute recess, go into closed session.